Hi, my name is John Gomez, and I am with Sensato Cybersecurity Solutions. I'm going to be spending a little time with you today discussing how to reduce advanced persistent threat detection timelines. What we mean by that is, how do we actually take the number of days before we know that somebody's in our network and get that down to hopefully a very short amount of time. But before I get into that, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Sensato and what we do, just to give you a little bit of framework of reference and qualification for why should you listen to me today. Sensato started back in 2013, and since then we've won a variety of awards for innovation and leadership in cybersecurity. Our company offers basically 4 different things. One, a security operations center located out of the East Coast of the United States, which we call the CTOC, or the Cybersecurity Tactical Operations Center. It is a little bit different than what most people think of when they think of a SOC. We kind of have taken things and elevated them to a new level. The second thing we do is we have a medical device security program called MDCOP, which is a holistic offering on protecting medical devices. We're now expanding what we've learned there in protecting human lives to IoT security and industrial control security. We also have our own cybersecurity operations platform known as Sensato Nightingale. Sensato Nightingale is a cloud-based security offering that's extremely holistic and based on everything we've learned in doing this since 2013. Underlying all that we do is our advisory services, which includes things like risk assessments for NIST 853, C2M2, Top 20 CSF, HIPAA, PCI, and a variety of other assessment programs. We also do penetration testing, red team testing, red team, blue team exercises, incident response programs. We have a lot of training that we do specifically around writing secure code and some other advanced threat intelligence programs. All of that is what we use to kind of bring these educational sessions to you. And so with that, as much as I hope that if there's some way that we can partner with you, that you'll reach out to us, what I really want to do is get into the educational side of this presentation today. So about 10 years ago, we found that it would take about 3 to 5 days to detect that an attacker had gotten into your network. And now we're seeing that, depending on which research study you look at, it could take well over 300 days before you detect that someone has actually breached your network. Now, the sad part about this is that this actually is happening even though organizations are investing more and more every year on defending their systems. In fact, on average, organizations spend about 20% more year to year in defending their networks from attackers. Now, I think there should be a goal that we kind of embrace as part of this. If we're going to accept this and realize that it's true, then we should probably have a goal, simple goal, that says we need to reduce this number from months to days to hours or even minutes. And I know a lot of people are saying, well, that's a lofty goal, John. That's a lot to think about. We're doing everything we can. And I'm not disputing that we're doing a lot, but I think there's a little bit more we can do. And I think you'll be surprised at how simply we can take action that could have amazing results in terms of detecting APT attacks. But to do that, before we get to that, I want to review a little bit about APT and kind of give us some hints onto how we can actually use an attacker's own tactics against them. So APT typically has 4 different areas when we kind of look under the covers. The first is incursion. The attacker needs to get into our system, and that's often done through 0-day or early stage attacks. The second thing they do, once they gain that foothold, is they catalog the environment. And they do something which is called a low and slow tactic to avoid detection. Or they will they will also map the environment at the same time. And this mapping, this basically going out and learning what's on our network, is cataloging, what we call cataloging. And then they'll evolve their ability while they're in our network over time, right? So they're going to deploy tools and technologies that help them continue to maintain that foothold and expand their presence within your network. The last thing that's going to happen is they're going to begin to exfiltrate the information that was cataloged or data, or they're going to take other action. In any case, regardless of the APT attack, we're looking at pretty much these are the 4 things at a very high level that is occurring. So I want to kind of dive into these a little bit deeper and kind of compare how attackers are working versus how we're defending. So we talked about in the last slide that there are basically four things that attackers are doing. They're using some type of zero-day attack or early stage attack. Now, an early stage versus a zero-day attack, and a zero-day attack is obviously something we've never seen before, a zero-day exploit. Early stage is something that is occurring and we're aware of it, but we may not have the defenses in place to protect ourselves. And it's typically because we don't have the right signatures or something else isn't there to allow us to detect these attacks. And interestingly, what we're seeing now is attackers are moving away from zero-day and early-stage attacks and using kind of technical normal attacks, which is where attackers are basically using the technology as it was designed to cause exploits. We're seeing that a lot out of Russia and some of the other Eastern Bloc countries, which are becoming really good at attacking networks by using the networks as they were designed, not actually finding exploits, but just using the lack of maturity in some of the protocols and some of the techniques that we use, because when they were designed, we didn't have to think about security at the level that we do today. The other thing is this low and slow. By going low and slow, they don't really create an abnormal situation. And so that also works against us as defenders. The other thing is mapping, right? So the ability to catalog and map our networks is another tactic. And often this is done within the confines of a normal operation, right? Normal network operations. And then time. They have all the time in the world. Most attackers don't have to execute an attack within a given set period of time. So all of these things kind of work in a way that go counter to what we believe are the state-of-the-art tools. So for example, signature-based systems, well, if you have a signature, you might be able to detect that somebody's on your network, but until you do, and you can't detect them, right? No signature, no detection, which we all know and we understand, and we accept the risk. But unfortunately now we're starting to see that these low and slow and these kind of tech normal attacks don't present signatures, or we're seeing polymorphic attacks where the signature changes on every attack, and that becomes a very challenging problem for signature-based systems. The other thing we're seeing is, well, we can say machine learning. The challenge here is that attackers are learning to redefine normal because they have time. So what happens is they breach the network. We have a machine learning based system that's been trained to understand normal, but the attackers then take time and every day they do something a little bit different, not enough to create a threshold, not enough to create a new pattern, but to evolve the pattern. And because of that, machine learning based systems will begin to understand a new normal. And the attackers are able to work within that new normal because they're not really doing anything wrong according to the machine learning systems. So as you can see, there's kind of a disparity between the way our tools work and the way that attackers work. Now, I want you to understand that I'm not saying you shouldn't use signature-based or machine learning-based systems. In fact, our Nightingale product relies on signature-based and machine learning systems. We have modules that do network intrusion detection and do other things that utilize these kinds of approaches. What I am trying to get to is that there are still opportunities to further improve our defenses and not just think that the only way we should do things is with signature-based or machine learning, that there's more that we should be putting into our arsenal beyond that. And we're going to talk a little more about that as we go forward. So this here is basically a much more defined methodology, if you will, life cycle for an advanced persistent threat. And, we can certainly go into this. I'm not going to go into it today, but there's a couple things I want to use this for that'll point out and kind of solidify a point. The first is that most of our tools, most of the things we do when we're trying to detect attackers, when we're using signature-based machine learning or other types of tools, is that we're looking to test for detection, right? That's what a signature is doing. Did we detect any type of signature on the network that would indicate that somebody's breached us? And we're also looking for the deployment of tools, right? Did something get deployed? Did malware, virus, Trojan, something get deployed? Do we have a signature for that? We're also looking, typically with machine learning tools, at some of the other things like 8, 9, 10, and 11 on here on the left-hand side of the screen. Are we looking, is the attacker, is a large amount of data now moving across the network or moving to an IP address we didn't know? And again, all of those things are really important to be doing, and I would never ever champion not doing them. But there is something that we kind of have not really paid attention to, and that is that upon initial intrusion, and this holds true for pretty much every APT attack we've seen, the attacker begins to catalog your environment. They're trying to figure out what is on your network. Okay, and that's really important because if we can do something to identify that cataloging process, immediately we have reduced the amount of days to detect the breach. And so that's really where we need to focus when it comes to how do we reduce that timeline. Okay, what can we add to our arsenal to help us do that, to help us define that catalog? And some of you say, well, my signature system would do that, or my machine learning system would do that. Well, it might, but is there a better foolproof way? Something that would defeat polymorphism and something that would defeat low and slow and zero-day exploits and all of those things that attackers have in their arsenal. Is there something we can introduce that would help us kind of even the odds? So let's look a little bit about how catalog operations actually work. Well, first, the objective of cataloging is what? To fingerprint what you have on your network. And by fingerprinting, what we mean is we're going to get a list of every port on every machine, what services are running on those ports, what's the operating system, what's the underlying hardware and hardware architecture, what software are you running, how's your network traffic and network traffic rules shaped out, what network devices do you have on your network, what patch levels are you at, and what network architecture do you have. Now, this creates a catalog for the attacker, right? Basically an asset inventory. And so how do they do this? Well, it's not that hard. They can use Nmap, ping, ARP scans. They can try to SSH, FTP, SFTP. They can use Python programs. They can deploy Metasploit if they're being very aggressive and try to use that as an exploit tool or a fingerprinting tool. They can use OpenVAST to run vulnerability scanners. In fact, we've seen attackers use commercially available vulnerability scanners. They download trials, a trial version of the vulnerability scanner, and then run them within somebody's network to see what vulnerabilities exist on the network. And all of these techniques, for the most part, don't get detected. And if they do, it's usually quite a period of time between the initial attack or initial intrusion and the time that they're detected. But these are the ways they're doing it. There's nothing fancy here. There's no super secret sleuth stuff that's occurring. So let's take a little bit more illustrative look at how this works. So we have our attacker here. I'm going to use my trusty laser pointer to kind of point things out as we go. And we can see that this person is basically some shape or form infiltrated our network. So they're going to send some, let's say an Nmap scan or a Python program they wrote, and they're going to catalog an asset on our network. And at this point, they're going to continue to do that. They're going to just go through the network and continue cataloging every system. And again, they have every port, service, software, hardware, pretty much everything there is to know about everything on our network is cataloged and sent back to them. And using that information, they can then either escalate or elevate or pivot, right? And that's kind of their goal, and they'll continue this pattern until they find what they're looking for and then take whatever action on objectives they're going to take. So the question really is, what can we do to stop that cataloging or detect that cataloging? What can we do to understand this is occurring? And, I think that one of the options is to introduce maybe our own little device. So that's this guy here. And this time when our attacker decides to go ahead and begin cataloging our network, same kind of process, whatever technology they're using, goes ahead and catalogs the system. And as they continue cataloging, they still do it, and they're traversing the network, but now they've hit our system. And our system raises an alert. And so really all we've done is introduce a honeypot into the system. And I think that that's a really important step here. We don't nearly see enough honeypots on internal networks. And so this, whether you believe it or not, makes a huge difference when it comes to actually reducing that detection timeline. Why? Because we're basically using the attacker's own tactics against them. The fact that they're going to catalog and they really don't know what's on that network, they don't know what the honeypot is versus what it's not, they're going to go ahead and trip it. And when they trip it, we're not using signatures, we're not using machine learning, we're not trying to determine if this is normal or not normal. We're just going to raise an alarm. And that is really the secret kind of sauce here, if there is one, is the fact that the honeypot is that last line of defense, that piece that says, hey, I'm not going to figure this out. I'm just going to let someone know that this is occurring. Now think about your security awareness training. What is it we try to get users to learn and to know and do? See something, say something, not analyze it, right? We don't want an end user to analyze, oh, is this a ransomware attack? Is this a phishing email? Should I click on it? No. If you really feel like something's going wrong, you need to raise your hand and tell somebody. And that's what the honeypot does. It's all it does. And because of that, it's really hard to defeat. It's really hard for an attacker to get past it. So let's talk a little bit about deploying honeypots to reduce APT detection timelines. First of all, if you're going to do this, there are a variety of open source solutions out there for honeypots that you can use. You need to deploy the honeypots on each internal network segment. In fact, you should probably deploy more than one honeypot per network segment. You want to think about this from the attacker's perspective. You want to assure that the honeypot has a broad profile or a large attack surface, right? If we were doing security assessments with you, we tell you to minimize your attack surface. But when it comes to honeypot specifically, you want to make it as large an attack surface as possible. Make sure that it's going to get hit and touched for any number of reasons, right? So a large attack surface with a honeypot. You want to keep the honeypots up to date. Make sure that you've you're patching them, that you have the right hashes in place, that you've keeping up to date with any vulnerabilities for the honeypots. You got to really need to manage them, and that's really important to do with these. And you probably want to keep these confidential. I understand it's a little draconian, but the reality is that aside, although external attacks and external actors get a lot of press, still to this day, the majority of successful attacks involve insiders. And so keeping the honeypot deployment confidential and classified helps to assure that even if somebody on your own network is doing something that they shouldn't be doing, they're going to trip that honeypot. So, that's kind of the secret sauce here. That's kind of the big takeaway for you is, deploying these things. And one thing I want to make sure everybody understands, we're talking about deploying these things inside your network, not facing outside the network, but inside. And don't get caught up on, well, is the honeypot going to, trap the attacker? Or no, what you really want is something that if they get touched, they set off an alert. They alert you immediately. And to that end, we developed Sensato Nightingale PDA, which stands for Breach Detection Agent. And the Nightingale PDA is really easy to deploy. We designed this from the ground up. It's a commercial, professional grade honeypot. And so we really made it easy to deploy. We made it really easy to maintain, to manage, and most importantly, to afford. You can deploy a single PDA agent, or you can deploy thousands of them. We've designed this to be able to scale up to the largest multinationals. And when you go ahead and deploy, whether you deploy 1 or 1,000 or 10,000 PDAs across your network, they're all managed centrally from a single console in the Sensato Nightingale cloud. And so they work really, really well. If you touch them, they're going to set off an alarm. They're going to help you reduce those breach detection timelines. They're really designed to be a last line of defense. With them, you're going to get, it's a subscription-based program. You can cancel at any time. And the way it works is basically that you'll get ongoing maintenance and support. As we introduce new features for the PDA, you'll be getting those. So it really is a cool way to kind of, if you need a commercial grade, professional honeypot, really don't know of anything that would come close to what we're doing with the Nightingale PDA. So with that, I want to thank you for your time this afternoon, and or this morning, or this evening, depending on where you may be in the world. And I really hope that some of the key takeaways you take away from this is, one, that you do need to have something that's a little bit more low-tech, reliable, like a honeypot. And whether you go open source or you go with the Sensato Nightingale PDA approach, the important thing is to add this to your arsenal, right? To evolve the arsenal you have, the set of tools, and to find a way to use the attacker's own tactics against them. So I hope if you have any questions, you'll reach out to us. We hope we can partner with you on some level. Love to get to know you and work with you. More importantly, if you can also share this and add comments in the area below, that'd be greatly appreciated. But we hope you found this valuable and that you took something away from it, and that it makes a difference in your defense.